What is your panic level at with Baltimore at this current moment of time after losing to the Browns?
So are we like hitting it out of a 10, out of a 5? Give me a little bit of a grading system so I can kind of
One
estimate.
out of 10. 1 out of 10.
1 out of 10, I'd probably say about a 5 or a 6. And if Lamar is hurt for an extended period of time, probably about a 7, just because they had a commanding lead in this division when they went on that little bit of a win streak. When they were about, I believe, 7-3. Now they're sitting at 8-5, and you look at it and you say, okay, what are we going to do in this situation to keep our division behind us without Lamar Jackson? You have to plan accordingly without Lamar. Now, Tyler Huntley is very capable of doing what Lamar does because, as you can tell from today's game, he can hit the deep ball. He is mobile with his legs, and the RPO system that they run with Devontae Freeman is still very efficient. It's just a matter of can this defense hold up? And over the last 2 weeks, it has been a little bit of both, where, offensive ineptitude, defensive liabilities. Now, I know that on the defensive side, they've had a lot of injuries, probably more than most teams, unfortunately. But it's definitely not the play calling. It's definitely not special teams because obviously in the special team aspects, you have Justin Tucker, who's probably the greatest kicker in football right now. When it's all said and done, I've said this on multiple episodes, he will probably go down as the best kicker of all time. But man, it's really hard to gauge, man, because you don't know what's going to happen. If Lamar plays, of course, when he is on the field, he gives them the best possible opportunity and chance to win because of what it is that he can do with his legs. But his inability to be consistent with his accuracy has been where Baltimore has failed. In one game in particular, I believe it was Cleveland the last time they played, he had 4 interceptions. Last week against Pittsburgh, I believe he also had two interceptions. So you really look at it and you say, can Lamar Jackson keep the ball on his side of the field? Can he stop turning it over? We're not going to know that. We don't know the extent of the ankle injury. We don't know if it was a medium, high, low ankle sprain, but the fact is he was ruled out pretty quickly after he was hurt. So I would assume it's probably, again, this is just my opinion, anywhere from mid to high if you were able to rule him out that quickly. And of course, they carted him off, which to me would imply he wasn't able to walk to the locker room uh, off his own willpower. So I'm really nervous. The offensive line was not really able to protect, and I'm just kind of looking at this saying if Lamar is not in, I would say that Baltimore's chances of winning the division continue to slim out, especially because of the narrowness of the AFC North, with the Bengals being at 7-6, with the Browns being at 7-6, and Pittsburgh being 6-1. Pittsburgh obviously on the outside looking in. This is probably the tightest division in the entire NFL, and it's with good reason. The Browns have a great team. Obviously, the Bengals are a resurgent team that I don't believe anybody saw having the season that they are. And then, Pittsburgh is finding a way to claw through and remain relevant, but it's really tough to go out there and make a prediction, man. But in terms of a panic meter, definitely a 5 or a 6, and if Lamar's hurt, probably 6 or an 8. Or excuse me,
Yeah,
a 7 or an 8. My bad.
yeah, this is a tricky one for me because I think the Ravens are in some pretty deep trouble here, and here's why. They've been so reliant on Lamar Jackson to carry not only the offense but essentially the entire team because with the amount of injuries that they sustained before the season even started, and then the injuries that they've had throughout the season, at some point, I just think it's too much for one guy to carry single handedly. And I think Lamar has done a decent job of getting this team to where they've been. I mean, they've still hold a divisional lead despite all the injury issues that they've had this year, and that really is a tip of the cap, excuse me, to Lamar's playmaking ability and just the dynamic athleticism that he brings to Baltimore. But with this injury, I think it really throws the rest of their season in doubt. Now, it obviously depends on how severe his ankle injury was. If it was just a low to mild sprain, he might miss next week. But if it's anything more significant where he could miss some considerable amount of time, I think it essentially ends their playoff chances. I don't see how this team can get to the playoffs without Lamar Jackson literally acting like a freaking superhero to get this team into the playoffs. Now, I do think that Tyler Huntley, he filled in admirably when Lamar got hurt, but I don't know if he's able to do that on a consistent basis as the starter moving forward if Lamar is really dealing with a major ankle injury here. Now, As far as a panic meter goes, I'm at like a 7. Now, that may change a little bit based on the severity of Lamar's injury, but I just don't think that this team is capable of making a suitable run into the playoffs if Lamar is dealing with this injury, because it's going to compromise his running ability. And I don't know if Lamar Jackson's passing ability is going to be enough to get Baltimore into the playoffs, because we've seen Lamar have great passing performances, but they've been few and far between. The first matchup against Cleveland, he had 4 interceptions. And in some of the games recently, he's turned the ball over on a consistent basis. And I don't think that bodes well, even if he's in the game in these next couple games, despite dealing with an ankle injury on top of that. So the defense is really going to have to step up if Lamar is out for the next couple games. And Tyler Huntley's going to have to play phenomenal football, because if they don't, I think Baltimore's going to be looking on the outside in, because I think the Browns and the Bengals, even though the Bengals lost against the 49ers this weekend, I think both of those teams smell blood in the water. They know that Baltimore's hurt, and they know that they're definitely weakened, and I think they're going to take full advantage of that with the last couple weeks we have in the season. So panic meter is about a 7, but it could be a little bit less depending on how severe Lamar's injury is. If it's less severe, I think it may be around a 5. But if it's more than that, if it's like really bad, I could have it as high as a 9. So I'm going to take the middle, and I'm going to say a 7. That's how I see it.